Hello everybody, it's Chaz in Omaha, and today I bring to you my take on a cold werebear. You can see I've named him I'm a Burr. Anyways. Alright, so first I'm just going to go through the general gameplay with this character. So you always sit in werebear form, and you spawn these plants by walking around, and they give you infinite rage. And then you pretty much just right click swipe. You can see that it does some cold shred thanks to a blessing. And it also gives you those panther stacks on the bottom, which give you a bajillion health regen plus crit multi. And then whenever you want to omega murder something, you shout, maul. You can see there we got a 1.1 million. You always want to shout right before maul because it does a lot of buffs to your character. So you don't want to maul without the shout buff up. There's a 1.3 million, that's pretty good. Okay, so that's pretty much, that's pretty much the playstyle. You got Rampage where you can run through. It actually will kill weaker mobs, but it's mostly just to get around. And you can see that, like, even our shitty builder does 65k when you have all your stacks up. Right? 71k, it's actually crazy DPS. If you stand still for too long, you lose your plants. And you'll fall out of bear form, but it's not really that dangerous because you can go back into bear form after like 6 seconds, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Alright, so that's pretty much it for gameplay. Next, we'll just go over the general skills that this character uses. First and foremost, there's Swipe. Now, Swipe does, as we saw earlier, a good amount of damage, but really the main purpose of Swipe is to build up these aspects of the Panther stacks. And you end up getting 7 maximum stacks, each one giving you 75% health regen and 24% crit multiplier. The health regen is not only a ton of defense, but it's also like a ton of offense because of the set this character is wearing. And obviously 168% crit multi is kind of insane. So next we have Warcry. Warcry gives you a 200% increased crit chance. It gives you some chill chance, which is kind of nice. It gives you a bunch of cold percent. And then it also gives you haste and frenzy for about 2 seconds on use with about a 4-second cooldown. So, you know, you have haste and frenzy up half of the time because of Warcry, plus a bunch of crit. It's pretty strong. Next we have Fury Leap. Now the interesting thing about Fury Leap is that this skill is Maul, technically, because of a point in the Werebear tree that we'll see later. So Fury Leap, gives Upheaval an extra multiplier. It gives Maul an extra 100% crit multi. So now Maul is up to 268% crit multi just from skills, right? So that's the reason why we see such huge crits when we do Maul. And then you do a bunch of damage against hit the full enemies. This node right here, you don't necessarily need to have this node. It's good against trash sometimes, like between Warcries. But because Warcry actually does some damage, I actually kind of entertained the fact of getting rid of these two and just putting them in the standard damage multiplier. It's kind of up to you. I originally had 2 here because I had the plant spawning from here when I wasn't using Eterra Boots. So that's an option. You do want to get the area, I think, for quality of life because this turns your Maul into like an Omega AoE smash. It gets really big. So now we have the big part of the build, obviously, is Werebear form. You get this big multiplier here. You get base 8% crit with 200% more crit in Werebear. So this is like starting to get into the territory of why Maul is potentially 100% crit chance in this build. You get a little bit of armor shred. That doesn't really matter all that much, but it's fine. And then right here, we also proc Upheaval. And you can see here in the bottom of this description, because the leap also procs Upheaval, we get an extra 30% Upheaval multiplier here, which is quite relevant, particularly for single target. And this tree right here is very important. This is what makes Maul, quote-unquote, Fury Leap, and use the entire Fury Leap tree, which is like mandatory for Maul to be good. And then right here we have some free endurance and endurance threshold, which is really good, because this character is quite tanky. You can see later in the video when I'm fighting 200 Corruption Orobyss, I'm like not really doing a good job dodging things. And I'm pretty tanky. And then lastly we have Upheaval. Now, this skill isn't really mandatory. I know a lot of earlier builds would use Spriggan form in order to get rage from your plants, because before you didn't have the neck piece that gave you free regen per plant. So you could still use Spriggan form and use a different neck. You could do that, and then and then you can also use the Fury Leap to spawn free plants. I don't recommend that. I think it's worse because you lose a lot of points that give you a lot of damage here and area effect and stuff. So, but that is an option. If you don't have the Eterra Boots and or the neck, you can still make this work by just replacing Upheaval with Spriggan form and making Leap summon vines for you, and then you don't need either of those legendaries. That's it. That's pretty much it for skills. So next we can kind of go over the gearing on the character. The gearing has some options. As you can see, you wear a lot of uniques and set items, which makes resistances very difficult to balance. So the primary thing that you definitely have to wear for this build to be good is the set. So you wear this sword, it gives you a ton of flat melee cold, it gives you flat health regen, which is relevant. If you look at the two-piece on this is where, I don't know, probably 75% of our damage comes from. That two set is actually insane. You can see right here, I'm standing in human form, so I'm losing a lot of regen there, and I don't have swipe stacks, and I still have almost 500 health regen, and that's without having flat health in boots or headpiece, which would increase it by a couple hundred each, I think. I pretty much only have the flat health on gloves, and then you get the regen from this, and you get some regen from this head. That's pretty much all the flat regen I have. Oh yeah, and then the ring implicit. Now, if you switch to bear, it goes up to 743 right away. And if I get all my swipe stacks, you can see I'm at 1166. And that's the reason why the swipe stacks gives you a shit ton of damage, right? Yeah. So the set's very important. I think the build would still be functional. Like, you could probably do 100 corruption empowered echoes without the set. You would just kill things a lot slower. As soon as you put the set on at level 68, it's really, really apparent. Okay, so next, for the other weapon, you kind of have two options. I guess you have three options. You could wear another one of these swords. You'd get a lot of flat melee cold. You'd get, some more melee cold percent, which is kind of whatever, but you'd get something there, and you get flat health regen, which would be the main reason. Alternatively, you can use what I'm using. This is obviously like kind of an amazing version of this weapon, but you can see I have 86 flat melee cold on here, which is slightly higher than what you would get with this. I don't get the flat health regen, which kind of stinks, but I do get max necrotic res for free, which on this build is quite relevant because maxing your resist on this build is quite hard, especially if you're using the Eterra Boots and the neck. So I would recommend using Frozen Ire. Worst case scenario, you could just use Frozen Ire as soon as you can use it. I think the base level without a legendary one is like 38 or 36. So you can put that on at 36. You cannot dual wield these because you can only put a sword or an axe in your offhand, which is why my set sword is on the offhand. You have the Call of the Tundra. This is kind of a no-brainer helm. When you hit 74, I would say you just put this on, right? It has kind of everything you want. It gives you Warcry points, which is really strong. It gives you flat health regen, which is extremely strong. It gives you flat melee cold, which is also extremely strong. You can see I got pretty lucky, and I got +2 Werebear form in there, which is what allows me to have this extra free endurance percent, which is really nice, right? For the neck, once again, this is basically just for if you want to have the rage regen without needing to have Spriggan form, which the main reason I think that's useful is because Upheaval does actually amplify your single target DPS by a good amount. And then you have Eterra Boots. These just spawn plants, right? And in combination with this, keeps you in bear form basically all the time, right? We get 3 plants at a time, every 5-ish or so seconds. I would mention that there's some consideration to be done on fights like Orobyss or Legon, bosses that are likely to incidentally kill your plants. You might need to stop attacking sometimes and just kind of run in a circle for a second, or you can just drop out a bear and go back in. It's not really that big of a deal. As far as other gear goes, on gloves, you absolutely want to get tier 6 or tier 7 flat health regen. The other stats like the crit chance and stuff are good, but just flat health regen is so insanely strong that I can't recommend any other stat. Just prioritize flat health regen on the gloves. On the belt, I actually ended up getting a crit strike avoidance purple, which is really convenient, right? So it helps me get crit stack without using my blessings, which is nice. I would recommend getting either just boots or belt with CDR if you can. It makes the increments of using Maul feel a lot better, along with Warcry being like a lot closer to permanent if you just have one tier 5 or better CDR. As far as rings, you can use either coral or copper rings. They're both quite good. Maul has a really, really high base crit chance in this build, 13%. So you want to get as close to 170% critical strike chance on your gear as possible. And this, in combination with passives plus your skills, will give you a 100% chance to crit with Maul, which is insanely strong because you have a base 268% crit multi from just skills, not to mention if you get it like I do in the neck here, right? Or you can get it on the chest. As far as chest goes, I would probably just prioritize getting like resists and stuff on your chest. The purple health regen I have here isn't really that important. You get so much percent health regen from like swipe and passives and everything that it's much more important to have flat health regen than percent on your gear. So, and the +1 to upheaval here, that's not really intentional. That was more of a coincidence. I would recommend getting crit multi instead of that upheaval, and then getting Vit health regen, sealing a resist plus a resist. I like the Fizz Res armor for the same reason that I mentioned before, where capping resist is very hard. You can see that this character is like not even really, it's pretty much only capped on elemental and necrotic because of the weapon. And it's not really that big of a deal, especially poison. Poison is like super not a big deal in this build. Because you're reaching so much health, poison is almost inconsequential, except for maybe on the poison Orobyss. And other than that, you know, physical, I would like to get more physical, but I just don't. All right, so the last part of gearing is we talk about idols. Now, idols are really, really, really strong on this build if you get the right prefix. So you can see on all of these big idols I have health regen while transformed, and I got retardedly lucky on the rolls. Look at this. This thing's almost max. This thing's almost max. This thing's very close to max. This one is actually max. So if you can get 4 increased health regen while transformed, it is going to make your character way, way, way stronger. This one is perfect. This is what you actually want. Melee, crit, molt, and health regen. This is the only one I've ever seen of this combo. This is the god roll. You want 2 of these for the triple, the 3x1s. And this duration of Aspect of the Shark is okay. It's not really ideal. Vitality would be better, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. Over here, this elemental resistance while transformed or something on one of these side ones is pretty convenient because, once again, getting resistances cap is pretty hard on this build. That's pretty much it for gearing. So, next we can kind of talk about, like, while you're leveling. So, obviously, you're going to start with swipe, right? You're going to start out with swipe, and you're just going to run around and, you know, claw things in the face. You pretty much just want to get to this as fast as possible for your attack speed. And then I would ignore this node at the beginning and just kind of alternate between these two. This node right here, early on in the game, if you just put 1 pair of gloves with flat health regen on, and you have like a few points in this node with a few points in this node, you basically just become invincible up until, I don't know, like level 75 plus monoliths. Because you get so much health regen that way that, like, you just, unless you get one shot, you're like invincible. It makes your life really easy. It makes this character feel really, really chill to level. It's nice. Once you like get farther in the game and you get the crit base here, then you're gonna want to get this because this becomes really strong. I would recommend you dual wield really, really early on because of this node specifically. And other than that, I would probably just go in the order that I have these. You might be able to swap Werebear for this because of when the level you get Werebear. But once you get this like swipe and health regen, it kind of doesn't really matter that much what order you do this stuff. Let's see for leap. What would we prioritize for leap? So if you're not using Eterra Boots, this is Prio. This is Prio. You need to get this as fast as possible. If you are using Eterra Boots, then I would probably just do the cooldown and the area first. Maybe while you're leveling a little bit of this, but it's not... Nah, I take it back. Don't even worry about that. I would just get the cooldown and the area, and then eventually you want to max this before you worry about like the other stuff, because this crit multi, when you have this, is very strong, right? So on Shout, it doesn't really matter which order you do it. I would do this stuff last. This is sort of like an extra. It's kind of whatever. This makes the cooldown way shorter, but the cooldown being way shorter without the buffs doesn't really matter. So I guess I would probably get this cold buff first, like this whole line, like just get one here and then get this stuff, then go for cooldown. That way you can apply these buffs a lot more. Then I would go for this one because this one's kind of expensive compared to this one. And then lastly do this if you have extra points at the end. For Werebear, you need to get this. You need to get this. You need to get your Fury Leap onto your Maul. Once you get your Fury Leap onto your Maul, then I would beeline down for the flat crit. I would just like... I guess you could either do Rip and Tear or this. I guess it's kind of a wash. Since they're both functionally multipliers, you just do whichever one you want. It doesn't really matter. Take your pick. Max this out. Then eventually you'll get your extra upheaval. And then the last points I put in is this endurance. You don't really need this endurance. With how much health regen you have while leveling, this is not really that important till late game. Then last we have upheaval. So upheaval has a surprising amount of multipliers. It has the 30% multiplier here, because we definitely don't care about attack speed scaling to begin with. It has a functional 40% cold pen multiplier here. We don't get it doubled, because it's two-handed only, which feels kind of bad, but what are you going to do? This one right here is kind of one of the reasons why this is actually really good DPS on bosses. This has a proximity buff, right? And when you're mauling a boss, you're probably going to be within 6 yards of them, right? So this is pretty strong against bosses. And then this one makes it cold. It gives a little bit of freeze rate. That's kind of irrelevant. And then this one sounds amazing, and I thought it was going to be incredible. But what I found was that it's very unlikely for any relevant mob to be frozen long enough for you to actually hit them while they're frozen with upheaval. Because the only things that can really freeze for you are Warcry and upheaval itself. So this is pretty much just for melee cold damage. I did entertain the thought that getting rid of this and maxing this and this would be better, specifically for bosses. Because then you'd have a double multiplier here that would always work against bosses. And then, of course, this is just a normal multiplier. Maybe you, like, put 3 into here and leave 2 into here for some flat. I didn't really science it all that much because this character did so much damage already, but I think that there's some optimization to be done between this node and this node. And maybe this node. I'm not really sure. I'd have to do a lot of math to figure out how much flat melee cold you have external to this to see how much it actually helps you, right? So that's upheaval. Now, if you were to go the Spriggan form route, I don't know this tree really well, but what I do know is that you need this. This is the thing on Spriggan form. You don't actually end up using Spriggan form, right? You just spec it. You just spec it, and you don't even need to put it on your bars. You just need the vines to give you rage, right? And then you turn them into ranged attacks, not melee, so that they can always give you rage while existing and just hitting things. The real downside of using the Spriggan form route, other than the neck, is that your vines will only give you rage while they're hitting something, which is really unfortunate, right? With the boots plus the neck, the vines just have to exist. Like when you're going through echoes, you'll run between packs, some plants will spawn in Africa, and just them existing somewhere on the map gives you rage, which is really nice. So now we can go over the passive tree for the Werebear. So you get some health regen and strength here. That's pretty important. This lets you dual wield, so this is obviously mandatory. This one gives you a crap ton of max health. That's important. This one gives you some melee damage, and melee damage leeches health. This isn't really very important, but whatever, I guess. I think it could be argued that you probably could put these points in here just to get more health, because you don't really need leech on this build, but I don't know, I think it's kind of a wash. So you just end up getting exactly 20 just because it's mandatory, right? Now for the Druid tree itself, I think you want to max this for free endurance and armor. I think that's really strong. This one is more of just a filler because you need points to advance. Flat health is good, but this mana or rage cost as health on spellcast is like not really relevant. This one's really important. 7% pen, huge. This one, you know, attack speed isn't like super important, but a certain amount of attack speed allows you to stack your cold shred or maybe armor shred if you happen to have that on your neck or something faster, and it makes it feel better. So that's good. This one's really important because you want to get crit chance here. That way you can hopefully get your maul to be 100% crit. And more health leech on crit, which is, once again, not really all that relevant, but whatever. We'll take it. This one's extremely strong. 16% cold pen. This is probably the best node in the tree. This one is, you definitely want 6 into this. The flat 10 health regen. The health regen percent is good, but the flat health regen right there is really important. This one's also very important. And once again, the rage gain on crit here is actually kind of relevant because of boss fights like Legon, where he keeps killing your plants randomly, so it makes it a little less likely you'll fall out of bear form. And then this one is just incredible defense, right? Like, this is a ton of health, and then you get more endurance from your max health. That's really strong. This Beastmaster tree is extremely strong. I actually started filling in the Beastmaster tree, I think, after I got this instead of these two, because the beginning of the Beastmaster tree is disgusting. I can't believe how strong this is, right? 16% less damage and 8 strength. Oh god, that is a strong node. This one is also very strong. This is a 15% DR that's a little permanent. It's this, if you just have it in here, it's not really permanent on bosses, and it almost doesn't even really work. So you also get this one, which gives it another 15%. So this thing's a 30% DR and gives you 75% health regen, which is particularly relevant for this build. You want some points into this. Between 1 and 5, just depending on what you think. I think around 3 makes it so that a 5-second buff can be up a majority of the time on bosses, which is kind of why you want this point. If you don't care about survival during bosses, then you don't really even need this, because, you know, this is basically permanent on trash. But where this is really relevant is going to be on bosses, right? So if you can swipe enough for 12% to proc this every 5 or so seconds, that's a 30% DR you're gaining, which is kind of massive. And then I did this 1 point just so that, like, every, you know, 60% of the time you have a free 10% attack speed with 75% damage. It's pretty good. I entertained the thought of going down here and getting some armor shred, but, like, the points are just too tight. There's too many strong things. So when you're leveling, I think I would get this first for the pen, or this first, depending on if you want more damage or more defense. The rest of the stuff in here is kind of just filler to move you forward. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory what order you'd go in, right? And then I would say right when you get 6 into this, I would move over to the Beastmaster tree and at least get, like, maybe 3 seconds on this. That way you just get a free 15% DR. You could just max this and just go up to this while leveling, because once you start putting points into here, not only is it crazy amounts of DR, but it also gives you offense at level 68 plus, right? So I would do this as a priority, probably at least as a priority over this. I think it's better than this. Yep. So that's pretty much the points. So that's pretty much it for leveling priority, how you should put your points into your skills. And now I'll show you just some gameplay videos of some echoes and a 200-ish Corruption Orobyss fight so you can see the gigantic numbers that this produces. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for watching. You're at work right now, though, right? You probably just have like easy internet access there while at work, so you can just kind of watch stuff. That's probably pretty common nowadays, right? People can just like put headphones on and watch like some YouTube or some shit while they're working nowadays. I mean, that alone, I think most desk jobs are like way better than they used to be, right? Just because you can just watch some Netflix or some shit while you're working, right? I bet it would make you work a lot better in general, right? Because you're way happier, I would think. Ooh, that was 100k on that guy. Get wrecked, bro. Some legendary power that's like, you have 3 charges on your leap, and when you leap on things, it roots them for 3 seconds. Something like that would be pretty good, right? Or you move 30% faster for 4 seconds after you leap or something like that. That'd be pretty good. All of the above, perhaps? Zoom, zoom. Spawn some plants down here. Hello, wake up. Come on, plants. There you go. Looks like it's the blood one. Oh my god, dude. 140k. Get wrecked, man. There he is. Nope, none of that. Ouch. Those blood orbs do a shit ton of damage, man.
Why do you resist? Oblivion.
Yeah, this guy's starting to take a lot longer now on like higher corruption, especially with this crit avoidance thing I have going right now. No! Stop that. Whoa! What did he just do? That was scary. Oh, that was a 195. Ah! Was that a 251? Is that something that just happened? Ouch. Dude, he's doing like some one-shotty nonsense, isn't he? There we go.